see it. There we go. Hey,
Beautiful.
all right,
Nice.
we're recording. Go ahead, take us away, Tom.
Right. Hi, guys. All right. So, school board elections coming up, Ashtabula County, all over the state, actually, and quite a bit of issues to uncover at a statewide level that you're responsible to vote for. But at a county level, it behooves you to go out, vote for candidates. We have had some candidates on in recent weeks. We have another one here that we are proud to introduce today. I am very excited, as is Anthony, my co-host here on The Cut. We have Miss Laura Jones. Laura, welcome to the show, man.
Welcome,
Thank
Laura.
you for
Thank
coming.
you so much for coming.
Thank you both very
And just
much.
to be clear, Laura is running for Ashtabula Area City School District Board of Education.
Yes.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So, Miss Jones, are you running for the 2-year term or the 4-year term?
Yes, please. Can you explain that?
I know, it's
because
very
even though I've had it explained to me a couple times, I still don't really understand it. But I'll let you explain it. Maybe I'll get it a little
I'm
bit
really glad you asked that question because it's confusing. So there are 3 seats available that are up for the, is it 3 seats or 2 seats? I'm sorry, for the 4-year term.
Okay.
And then on the 2-year term, how that came about is we had a school board member who resigned.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was appointed into that seat in August of 2022, July, August.
Mm-hmm.
And per the Ohio Revised Code, when that happens, in the following year's election, you have to run for the balance of that term.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there were 2
Okay.
years left when the school board member resigned. She still had, the rest of 2022 and 23. Gosh, was she new to it? Well, all I know is there were 2 years left on the term, so you have to then run in the general election for the balance of that. So that's
Okay.
what this is. So then I guess I would have to run again in 2025.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
a short stint,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask you. All right. So you are running against Tim Fleming for that seat. Tim is currently on the board. Is his seat expiring, and that's why he's looking to fill the 2-year seat? Is that how it's working, or I don't get it?
He chose to run it. So if you looked at it from that standpoint, it's the seat that I'm currently in.
Right.
Okay.
So his seat is one of the 4-year terms
Correct.
because his term was expiring. So he chose to run directly for the seat that I am in.
Okay.
Okay.
All
That
right.
makes sense.
Instead of running for another
Instead of
4-year
running for
seat.
his seat, yes. Or,
Okay.
the seat, a 4-year term again. He
Okay.
decided to
Okay.
run for the 2-year term directly against me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
so-
makes more sense. Why?
Yeah, does that-
Laura Jones
Right, because
Fleming.
otherwise, if you don't
Right.
know that and you go to the ballot, you're like looking at it like, okay, why are these people the 2-year term and 4-year? But had he not chosen to run for it, and I was the only one running, I'd obviously be the only one on the ballot. Had I chosen not to run for it, and he said, "Hey, I
He
want
would
to run
have
for
been
that."
the only one.
However, any of the candidates
Could have ran.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Anyone could have. If you wanted to run for school board, you could have said, "I'm going to run for the 2-year."
Okay, yeah, because I was always confused about that. I didn't know if maybe the 4-year had to be like someone that was incumbent, someone that maybe had more like experience, had maybe been on the board before,
Right.
and maybe the 2-year was like, okay, like these are newer male or female,
Yeah.
they've never been on a school board, so let's get them acclimated,
Not
So
at all.
that's kind of cool.
It makes sense now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
it makes a lot more sense.
And there's no, like a lot of elected offices, there are very few qualifying factors, right? The set of rules that you have to follow to be on the school board, I think right now it's being a resident, right?
just being a resident.
Being a resident in the district.
in the district. Okay,
In
so
the
it's
Ashtabula
not-
Area City School District. Mhm.
Okay.
So you run in the district that you live in.
Okay. And that clarifies a lot too, because I wasn't sure if, you had to just be like a resident of the county
No.
or okay. That's we're 4 minutes and 20 seconds in, and I've gained a wealth of knowledge on that. So why don't you educate us a bit on who you are, Ms. Jones? Where you came from, and maybe after that parlay into some of the positions that you hope to well, not positions, but like kind of your platform.
Sure.
Okay. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
I understood it.
Okay.
I got it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's rock and roll.
So, where I came from, about 3 streets over, I grew up here in the harbor. So that
Okay.
is where I came from. I graduated from Harbor High School, and then I finished school and graduated from Case Western Reserve University, and from there, kind of did the different like business jobs, and I always worked a lot in you know capacities that focused on work with volunteerism, community development, and in oh gosh, what year would it have been? 2009, I took the role as the executive director of Leadership Ashtabula County. So, Leadership Ashtabula County is a community organization, a nonprofit that, gosh, now it's been around 35 years. So, every year they have a cohort of adults from the community, and that can be anyone you can think of. I mean, I think, gosh, 2 of our 3 county commissioners have been through the class. You'll have engineers from INEOS in the class, school superintendents. A lot of them have been through the class. Just anyone from small business to large business, and they enter into this 1-year program. And every class day, so there's a day once a month, and there's a lot of leadership development with it. It's a lot of community building, but every day has a focus. So, for example, the day we used to do it in the fall was the first day was History and Heritage Day. So there's a huge focus on all of the history of Ashtabula County, and you spend the entire day from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. You're on a bus with everyone, different stops
It's like
here,
a field
there.
trip or what?
Like a giant adult field trip.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
but
Cool.
you meet, I think on History and Heritage Day, there's like 19 different stops. And did you know during the Civil War, era time period and the time period before that, Ashtabula County was considered one of the, kind of the hotbeds of not only abolitionism, but it was known for literacy and education in particular.
I was not aware of that.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We had a couple of different, academies and teacher college, different programs like that. So it was something that was really a renowned thing. So, for example, one of the places that we'd always go is the Hubbard House. And, you hear more about the history of the family, but history of the individuals that were able to be, helped through on their path to freedom. So
Nice.
a lot of that, but then all through the county, and there's 720 square miles in Ashtabula County. So that's a long day and a little bit of everything. So the next day, agriculture day, and it's kind of the same thing, and just all throughout the county, you'll see a huge dairy farm to learning about viticulture, and whether it's hobby farming or just all the different aspects of what is grown here, how does it impact the local economy. Then business, labor, and economy day, and I think on that day, boy, the class members are split into different sectors, and you'll go, maybe if you're with the Cognac group, you'll spend some time at Cognac Leather. Cognac Leather is a business that actually, if you're sitting in a chair in Starbucks, you're probably sitting on leather from Cognac Leather, or on different airlines, all of that. So a lot of people don't know that exists.
I had no idea.
I noticed there are small little gems like
There
that around
absolutely
all over
are.
Ashtabula. Actually,
There are. And, another great example, it was formerly Crystal Global, INEOS.
INEOS,
So,
INEOS is huge.
INEOS is huge. So the
Yeah.
second largest,
Pigment,
producer
yeah.
of TiO2 behind DuPont. So anything that's made that's white, from the white M on an M&M to this white, white paint, all of that is from TiO2. So it's really interesting what's made here in Ashtabula County that people may not know. And even small businesses.
I was kind of I learned how big INEOS was. I think I had an Xbox game, and it was a Formula One racing, and the car on the front had the INEOS logo on it, and I was like, wait, they're like sponsoring Formula One, and in order to do that, you've got to have a lot of money, which means you've got to be a pretty big company.
Right. And I mean, Vibrance, which was ChromaFlow, so the process, if you go to Lowe's and you have paint mixed for you, they actually years ago, purchased and consolidated with the company that created that process of mixing paint. So there's a lot that comes from Ashtabula County that people don't know about. So a lot of things so there's different days, Education Day, Health and Human Services Day. So I did that for 10 years. And we also have a youth leadership program for high school juniors, very similar structure to that, juniors from every high school in the county. So, and then we grew that into, I realized at one point that our high school seniors needed a different kind of support, because what I was seeing was our juniors were then, going off to college after a year or into the workforce. and they didn't know a lot about regional experiences. I mean, I know this may sound silly, but I had a student. She was a Lakeside grad, and she was the salutatorian of her class. And she came back and she's like, I felt awkward that first week of college, even ordering coffee at Starbucks, because it just wasn't something I was familiar with. And that really resonated with me. And that's such a small thing. So we thought our senior class, let's build out this program that gives them maybe a little more leadership development, a little more independence, and some regional experiences. And so we created a senior program from that. We created some other programs, such as one of the things I'm really proud of, and I guess this kind of ties into the school board sort of thing, is we always thought a lot about is if only our local educators had this opportunity to take part,
Sure.
like in this leadership class. So we created a 2-day program for teachers that they were able to get not only CU or CU continuing ed CE credits for that, but they had that mini experience as well. So they got the opportunity to go to all these different places and different businesses, see these different assets and gems in the community, but also figure out ways, how do I bring this back in the classroom? So that was a really neat thing, that happened over the course of that time. And I worked with thousands of high school kids and hundreds of adults, and was really active in a lot of things. I was on the board for the Growth Partnership.
What years were these?
I was at leadership from 2009 until 2020.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
And then from 2020 on, obviously, you were appointed to the board in 2022. What did you do in between those 2 years?
I had a master plan in 2018 and talked to my board and said, I really believe in organizational change. And, I think it's really good. Like, I've been doing this for a long time, and the organization was in such a great, successful place, and it still is. And I was really proud of that.
Sure.
And I also think that you need new people with new ideas. So in 2018, I said, I plan on leaving, in year 10. And so we worked at, looking for someone who would be, a great fit as the next executive director, and worked through all that process. And, the perfect individual for the role, started working there, and she's still there now because, and there's actually a great article we were talking about, doing research on this in the Gazette, and it talked about what was the reason that I was leaving. And it was because I wanted to spend more time with my kids. And that was 100% it. I was, really starting to feel like, wow, I don't want to miss these moments with them. And I was able to have that balance a little bit, but not as much as I wanted. And
Sure.
I really enjoy being with them. So, and I know, and my son had some different educational challenges along that way in that path. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to, be a strong support and kind of give them my focus. I felt like I gave so much of my, time, and, really enjoyed working to build our community. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing the same thing,
Yeah.
at home and
Yeah,
spending time with
absolutely.
kids. And I love it.
So what brings you? First of all, what brought you? What sparked your interest to apply for to run for that board position back in 2022, and what continues your drive?
Well, I didn't run for the position. So what happened was they had an opening on the board,
Right.
and they posted that there was an available position, and they were taking applications for it.
Right.
And so I applied.
Right.
Like anyone else, sent in my resume. I brought a copy of that, with me as well, if you'd be interested in seeing it.
Okay.
And I applied for the position, and I was interviewed, and they let me know that I was selected. And so one of the reasons that I want to do that is because I spent a lot of time learning a lot about what school boards do. I've spent a lot of time in board service. I've served on the Ashtabula Area College Committee, which is kind of the Kent State Advisory Committee,
Okay.
for a number of years. The board of New Entrepreneurs Opportunity Fund, St. John's School Board, United way back then. So a lot of different, the Growth Partnership Executive Committee. So I have a lot of board experience. And so I understand, how processes work and what it means to be, part of that oversight of an organization, not necessarily the day to day. I got a lot of that on the flip side, running a nonprofit organization. But it was really important to me to see, okay, our schools, we need to see success in education. And we need to, how can we better serve our students? That was something that I saw a lot of in leadership, is that our idea of, what's taking place in a school, or in a classroom is maybe a little different than the reality. Our students have they come to the table here in Ashtabula area city schools with maybe some different challenges, maybe not. It's an extremely diverse school district. And one of the projects that I enjoyed the most in my time at leadership that kind of brought me to the board service, I got a phone call from our former state representative, John Patterson, years and years ago. And he said, hey, can you get a bus of people together to go visit this school down in Cincinnati? It's called the Oilers School. And it's really unique because they have wraparound services. So they had a lot of money from, big behemoths like Procter and Gamble and things like that, where they had a dental clinic in the school. They had a doctor's clinic in the school. They had all of these different things that they were doing that was really inviting the community in. But also what they discovered is they had kids that weren't coming to school, period. I mean, students were in for a myriad reasons. And so they reached out to families and said, what is preventing you from, coming here? And they heard a lot of things, whether it was, a lack of access to services, a lack of access to, we can't afford to clothe our kids, or access to social services, access to resources. So they really worked within the community to figure out, how do we make school accessible, for people. So we had a hard time getting that group together. So finally, after a little while, myself and another nonprofit director said, okay, we're just going to go. So we went and visited the school and went and visited with a number of nonprofits in Cincinnati area that had worked on putting this together, brought that information back. There was a meeting at Ashtabula Area City School Districts, and people started to get on board and think, okay, maybe we can do this. So Community Action took the helm in writing the grants for it. They did a ton of research because you had to start this process by surveying the community and saying, is this something you really want? And like I said, Community Action, they are incredible. And so they worked with a board that, I helped out with that, Community Counseling Center. A lot of organizations came together to create this model. And through the grant funding they were able to secure, and in this partnership with the city school district, the first things that came of it were clinics. Well, it wasn't a clinic, but a process so that students were able to access eye care, vision care. And right away they had kids that, if you can't see the board, if you can't see what's in front of you, and you didn't have access to vision care, how are you going to succeed in school? So the teachers were helpful in kind of identifying and sending kids down to the DEC to take them for their vision screening. And kids were able to get glasses.
That's awesome.
Which is amazing. Now, another thing that existed is we had a large population of students that were receiving, Medicaid health benefits all throughout the years. It was impossible to find a dental care provider who accepted Medicaid here in Ashtabula County. A lot of families had to drive to Euclid. If our families are already struggling in all these different ways, and maybe they don't have transportation to get there, and if our kids are struggling, and if our kids are suffering with dental challenges and anything else, what does that path lead you to, down the line? And this lifetime of these of different health issues. So now, through that partnership that the DEC grew with Ashtabula County Medical Center was incredibly supportive, in Cleveland Dental, there's now a van that even comes, a giant van, to do dental exams for the kids. And great. The DEC does literacy, they do tutoring, they just added an after school program for high school kids as well. They provide winter coats, a little bit of everything. And that was really a huge significant thing to me, because it said, okay, we are seeing what we need to do here to help with that, like closing that achievement gap. And the way you get there is by making sure our kids can come to school and be met there.
So I have, with that, so that money was grant funded. And then a lot of the students that come, are they just students whose parents maybe just don't make enough or can't afford it, or
anybody can? It's everybody. Right. It's for everyone.
But right. Well, but I'm saying the majority of the students that showed up, are they just students who just are, their parents just aren't, maybe they're in the under the poverty line?
Our school is a 100% poverty school. So that's, what it is considered as well. Those services are available for everyone and anyone to take advantage of. And sometimes our parents they weren't aware of how to get there. And you see that a lot, in that educational journey, is And something that I feel really passionate about is ensuring that our families have access to information and services so that you never feel like, oh gosh, I don't know where to go. I don't know
Yeah.
where to find answers. And that was another thing that led me to apply for
Yeah,
the school board.
I think that's very important.
It really is.
But as far just to follow up on my question or what I was
Yes.
saying is, so the students that come, if a lot of them just their parents don't make a lot of money, they would or should or maybe they I would imagine they qualify for some kind of state assistance as far as medical, dental, vision, correct?
They do, but what I was saying is in terms of finding a provider. So with the dental care,
So it's just hard to find
it was really hard to find a provider that took that state care,
Okay.
that Medicaid provider. So so that
Is
was
it
one
just
of the
not
things.
is it not we don't have a whole bunch in the
We
area or what?
we didn't have any for a long time, and I don't know, if that has to do with reimbursements. I don't know. I'm not going to, supposition on that, but Cleveland Dental coming here filled that gap.
Okay.
Nice.
So yeah, which is really great, because it was really needed.
Right.
So
Is that still going?
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Good.
In fact, it's growing.
Good.
So, and that is housed in the Huron building. Actually, I know people had said maybe the Huron building was not being used or closed.
Right.
That's where the preschool is. So the preschool is at the Huron building,
Okay.
and that is where the deck is. That's actually where the Boys and Girls Club is as well.
So there are applications for that build. That's awesome.
No, they're there. They're in that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They're using it. Yeah, it was never closed.
So I wanted to tie back into something that you said earlier when you were talking about the Civil War and Ashtabula kind of and going around Ashtabula, we're finding maybe those hidden gems, maybe things that you didn't know about that were there, right? So when we think about schools in Ashtabula County, a lot of people because me being a car salesman, I meet people from like all across this area, right? And a lot of people I'll ask where they're from. They're like, so where are you from, Tom? And I'll say, I'm from Ashtabula area. And their first question always is, did you go to Geneva or did you go to Jefferson? And Lakeside is never really brought up. And I'm like, oh, well, I actually went to Lakeside High School in Ashtabula. And they're like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. And I think just to tie it back, from what I understand about the school board is there to not only enrich the lives of the students, but also to be that segue to the school through the community. And if I'm kind of I'm learning more.
No,
about
absolutely.
The
The school board really is that community liaison because our role is it's policy and it's kind of hearing from the community what is going on out there, what does our district what could our district do differently in serving our kids, and what is the community's take on our school district.
Those are actually going to be my next two questions.
To follow up on what I was saying, so instead of Ashtabula School like Lakeside being a hidden gem, obviously it behooves whomever to make it not the hidden gem but the gem.
Absolutely.
Right? So so what steps are being taken kind of to make it so that people like when they're like, hey Tom, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Ashtabula area. What kind of steps are being taken to kind of make it so like, oh yeah, oh man, did you go to Lakeside? You know what I mean? Like so what are we doing to make it not a hidden gem anymore, but the gem?
I think that's a great question.
Thank you.
So we're in a time period of great change in our school district.
Sure.
So we have a new superintendent and she's been there 4 months.
Okay.
And in that time period I say she's been in that role 4 months. She has been with the school district for 25 years.
Okay.
Working in the school district. So, and that, she's got a myriad of experience, whether from the preschool to working with state and federal grants, to a little bit of everything, to being a building principal, all of that. So she's got a really unique view on, what we needed to do to kind of realign some things in the district. So I know that some buildings have different principals this year. We actually have some new staff as well. We have a new athletic director. We have a new high school principal. So when people are saying, oh gosh, we need to make change, that's happening. right now as we are in the midst of that change. And so some of the things that are taking place, I'll give the example of, we had a wonderful team of community members led by Emery Moore, Lily Osborne, and others saying, hey, we really need a Boys and Girls Club. And we've got this great connections. We're going to bring this group in to meet with the school district. How can we make this happen? And that was a great example of the partnership that a group of community members said, we want to make this happen. We want to have more after school activities available for our kids. So that's up and rolling now due to those efforts. After School Discovery is another program that partners with the school district to provide those after school tutoring. I mean, that's a huge thing that they do. They have different clubs that expose kids to whether it's, career options or, different sports or different activities, whether
I'm
it's even
familiar with
craft.
After School Discovery.
Yeah,
How are you familiar with After School Discovery, Anthony?
I taught drones for After School Discovery.
Cool.
Yeah, drone classes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Are the Koblitz is still involved with After School Discovery?
Linda Koblitz is the director of After
nice.
School Discovery.
She lives 3 houses over from me.
And that's an incredible program. That program is funded largely in part from state grant funding and also from the district. Without that, we would not have, an after school program like that. That's so robust. And like I said, the students receive a lot of tutoring. They provide the summer offerings as well. So it's a really, really unique thing that we have here. So those are some of those different things that we're working on. One of the things that I love that just happened recently, but within this fall, that our superintendent put in place is a community calendar was mailed out to everyone in the Asheville area city school districts. And if you didn't receive one, if you call the office, I'm sure that, they can get one out to you. Yeah. And it has all of the different activities, the sporting events that are taking place. And what it really was meant to send this message of, come in our doors.
Sure.
We want you here. And so it's continuing that outreach. I think the board needs to continue to communicate.
I'm actually glad you brought that calendar up. And it's kind of going to follow Tom's question. So when I got that calendar and I put it on my fridge, I had joked to my son because my son, I told you, goes to Buckeye.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, hey, man, I want to let you know that, we had to move you over to Lakeside. And he actually got upset. Right. And I graduated from Lakeside. So I'm like, oh man, it would be cool to see him in the green and gold. But he was upset that he would be going to Lakeside. How do you get kids and parents how do you get them to buy in and want their kids to go to Asheville area city schools?
So I guess one of the things that I would ask is why? I would ask that of any parent. So why would you send your son to another school district as opposed to Lakeside? Right. But that's what we need to be asking.
Right.
Yeah. And you're welcome to tell me. I'd love to know.
Well, what is the answer you get most of the time?
The answer, when I ask people that question,
yes.
So I do get an answer. Sometimes people say, well, I wanted him to go to this school, or I think I think this about the school. I'm not going to say negative things about the school district. I'm just not. I'm not going to say.
No, you don't have to say anything negative
about it. But no. But
yeah.
People will say they may have a perception of this takes place there that doesn't happen at other schools, or I heard this in my entire time on the school board. And it hasn't been long. So that's the other thing. I have only been on the school board since August of 2022. Yeah. I have gotten, I think, 2 phone calls from an organization, a great community organization that said, hey, we've got a parent that has some questions about IEPs. Can you help them out? One phone call and one, I was trying to help a parent navigate through a situation that they were in that involved both athletics and classroom and all, a lot of different moving parts there. No one else has ever called me about a challenge or, anything with that, or about, an academics or anything. So that's then, it's on me, right? It's on me to say, hey, what can we do differently? And that was one of the things that I heard was communication. We don't know what's going on here in the district, or what's going on with transportation, or what's going on. People will say, what's going on with report card?
So not a whole lot of people even come up to you.
Not at all. Ever.
So could that be because they don't have faith in the people who are making decisions, such as the board or the administration?
I think that could be. And, to that, my challenge would be, have you called and spoken to Have you called? Have you brought your concerns to the board? And that's something I actually want to talk about really quickly, because when we have board meetings, it is a public meeting of the board. So it's a business meeting. We have a work session beforehand. We have an entire, we have a lot of time to review those materials. Sometimes we have special meetings in between. And when we have these meetings, there is that public participation piece.
Sure.
And what's read out is that as board members, this is the policy. It's the policy that we are bound to follow. Is I can't answer your question at that time. I would love to. There are things that come up. I'd like to say, I have the answer for you, or let me point you in the right direction. So I try in, different instances to approach someone afterwards and get them the information, maybe the answer to the question. And it says, please submit your questions in writing to the board. And that never happens. So that's a big challenge that I see, is how do we make people understand that we hear them. We want to answer their questions, but to answer your questions, you need to give them to us as well. So please ask. There is literally, in the school district, there is nothing to hide. Our finances, everything they are posted every single month. They are audited with a fine-tooth comb by the state, and because we receive federal money federally. So we are audited, every year. Our CFO treasurer has received awards for his ability to do his job so well, and the management of our money.
I have heard good things about him.
He's wonderful.
Yeah. Is that Mr. Estorino?
Yes.
Okay.
Our meeting minutes, every document is available online. There is nothing that is hidden. So my challenge, or my hope, people, is if you see something and you say, I need to know more about that, please ask. Our emails are on the website, everything. Please ask that question. I would love to provide you with a factual answer. We'd love to.
Absolutely. Now I've had a question that I've wanted to ask the last two guests that we have, but but somehow I never get around to asking. And the question came to me when Darius Williams was on here, and I found out that Lakeside or Asheville Area City Schools, I should say, has been receiving the failing grade from the state report card, or whatever you want to call it. And then I hear something like Geneva is got a C or something like that, maybe. But I hear all these things about Geneva, hey, there's problems with transportation. People are getting into accidents. These buses aren't even up and running. And I don't hear that about Lakeside, or Asheville Area City Schools, I should say. I don't hear anything about transportation maybe getting messed up, buses not coming on time.
Yeah,
that's my experience. I don't hear it. But that I hear it rampant with Geneva. So I think to myself, how is Geneva receiving a C on this? And I'm hearing nothing but negative. And I used to be involved in a podcast called 441 Goal. And we did high school sports podcasts. Sure. And granted, I was only getting the sports side of things with Lakeside, going to their football games, but the parents were always engaged, the facility looked top notch and everything. And I'm like, and now I think about it in retrospect, and I'm like, how is this a failing district when I see all these really nice things and I don't necessarily hear anything negative? But whenever I hear about Geneva, all I hear about is all these buzzwords like vulture and bad and buses breaking down and stuff like that. And I think to myself, how are they getting a good grade and we're not,
So a school district, if you think about Asheville Area City Schools, and you think about, what's the revenue number for years? $42 million. So think about this $42 million enterprise, right? And all of these different departments. So we'll take transportation as, as its own department. Okay. So that's run by a head of transportation. They have to liaison with all of the different operations departments, ensure that they have all of the updated addresses for all of our students, all of our families that first of the year, set the bus routes. Then all of the bus routes must then be bid upon by the bus drivers. And as you're aware, and I think as everyone's aware, nationally, we have a massive shortage of bus drivers. Yes. Every district is facing this. And, you try everything that you can. We try to ensure that, our rate of pay is at a parity and a scale where it needs to be. There's a new bus garage that's being built. The old bus garage was not, I wouldn't say it's greatly hospitable, but, you want to have an environment in which your buses are, they'll be inside And it also has a safe, clean, great environment for the drivers as well, with
Nice.
not only meeting space, but the old bus garage, it needed updated restrooms, all those things. So we have the ability to use funds that came from the COVID relief funds. It was
Okay.
very specific in what they could be used for. And that is that they are not dollars that we could apply in a classroom or anything like that. So they're able to be used. $10 million of that was able to go toward that building, that bus garage. So that's its own department.
Was there an option for renovation of the old one with that money?
No, they did a lot of study with that. And as far as what needed to be done there, there's always an option, but it would have actually cost, it would not have been cost effective to do so.
Okay.
So
And where's that new bus garage going?
Station
it is
Avenue.
on the former St. John's School site on Station Avenue on the
wow.
corner.
Okay.
So
okay.
they have cleared
They've
it's
already
a
got the
big
frame
site.
up.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So,
Yeah.
I don't really go around like that's not part of my usual route,
Okay.
through town, so I don't.
That's my
I'm
old.
privy to that, but
That's my old hood.
that's your
I
old
grew up
hood, huh?
over there, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's right, you did. Okay, yeah.
So that is where that's going. So that
That's
department, so transportation, it's that's its department over here. So in terms of how that impacts grades or numbers, you could say there's a correlation there because we want to ensure kids are getting to school. So once
Yes.
our kids are there or in that classroom, what are those other factors that are impacting their ability to learn? And so when we look from district to district, I think one of the important things to look at is, okay, how big is our district? Are we comparing apples to oranges here?
Okay.
As well.
Okay.
And not necessarily in our county. Every district has a very unique and different, shape to it, whether it's in terms of how large their district is, population of students that they're serving. And so everything is a little bit different.
Okay.
So in terms of how does, if, they have busing issues, how does that impact the classroom? I think we have to look at those a little bit differently.
Okay.
So classroom curriculum, and that's its own piece. And one of the things that we've gotten back to, and I know our school district has implemented, is in statewide, is they've discovered that we need to get back to those basics when it comes to reading, your phonics. It's called science of reading, which is, just the very straightforward way of, teaching kids how to learn to read. And that data has shown, and there are actually some great online resources about that talk about that, how over several years, these different programs that have been thrown out there were not doing what they said they were doing.
You mean we moved away from hooked on phonics?
No, well, science of reading gets a
I
little bit,
remember
back into that
I actually
phonics
took
piece.
I actually took a class on like basically the science of reading when I was in college.
Yeah.
I was actually a kindergarten teacher for 3 years, so
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I a lot of these classes and such I understand now, kind of, because I was in college. I graduated in 2012 from college, so I understand now some of those methods might be a bit antiquated, but
that's what's
it's
being implemented back. They found
they're going
that is
back
to science of reading.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely, 100%.
wow,
Because it works.
yeah,
And
yeah,
because
absolutely.
it is shown that is how students, the best method for them
Sure.
to learn.
Yeah.
So isn't that amazing?
Is that statewide or is that
statewide?
federal?
That is,
Because I know there are a lot of pushes on the federal level that could change.
that impact
STEM things,
literacy,
yeah,
and those are all things that are important and and necessary. But that is one I guess kind of speak to a little bit that our district is really re-embracing, of course.
That's
but
awesome.
a lot of times things happen, and school districts are given different mandates on different programs they have to implement, and the term is used, unfunded mandates, and they're told, okay, we're going to do this now, but we're not going to give you additional funds to do so. Continue, find a way somehow. And I think that's hard. And, I made a chart
and
today.
that's where it would be, that's where it would come up to the board to say, okay, well, if we need to do this, we need to maybe move some money from here to here, approve these cuts. Is that basically how it works?
Funding for a school district, yes and no. So funding, you can't just move money from one bucket to the other.
Right. I know
but
there are some
like title
yeah,
funds,
right.
that are specifically used, for different, classroom, and they have a lot to do with literacy, and you can't necessarily move those to over here, or dollars.
But
and
if you
cents
can
are
make but a lot of times if you
allocated
can
for specific capital improvement projects, all of
Right.
that. So
Okay.
it's not as easy. Not that it sounds easy, but things we all want a solution that looks like. And I guess I'll use special ed funding as an example,
Sure.
because I hear this a lot, and people say, "Well, if we didn't have to service so many of those things, we'd have more money for this." That is not so. And this adage that I guess I feel really strongly about is that by servicing gifted students, our typical students, our children who receive special education services, it does not take away from any other student. There are different streams of funding that address those things.
Right.
But it's not as easy as just as saying, hey, we need to drill down into this and take a look at it. We rely on, one of the board's jobs is in hiring a CFO who can do that, can show us all of that, show us this financial report. And we get a very detailed financial report, a very detailed operations report, and have the opportunity to look at it. Our challenge and our job is to understand what it means. And I'll give a great example, I think, in kind of understanding what that means is recently at a board meeting, some people spoke out and they said, "Why are you firing parapros? You're firing parapros. Why is that?" Because they may have looked in the board meeting minutes and seen that we were abolishing these 4 parapro positions, right? But what they did not see underneath that is that we were establishing 4 parapro positions. When there is a change in a status, so if you have a student who had a 1-to-1 aide and was assigned a parapro, and that student is no longer in the district, what do you do with the parapro? You have to abolish that position and reassign to a new position.
Mm-hmm.
So
is it a reassignment or are you replacing?
You're creating a new position for that individual to then be assigned to.
So,
they're not being replaced by anyone from outside. They're still in that position. So no one was fired. No one was let go.
So essentially that position. So my son's name is Wyatt. So
Okay.
So Wyatt is a special needs student. He has a parapro with him.
Mm-hmm.
So if Wyatt had his parapro and Wyatt left the school system that he's in right
Mm-hmm.
now and went to a different one, Jane, who is his parapro, is then no longer that parapro. So she's taken out of there,
Mm-hmm.
and then she's reassigned to Adam, who is the new one. That's kind of how I understand.
But you have to create a new position.
So the position
right.
is the aid of that student.
Right. So this is an example. So I took this directly from the board meeting minutes.
Okay.
And it said, abolish, these parapro positions. So I think, it had 4 positions listed. One, 1-to-1 academic behavioral, grade 11, Lakeside High School, 7 hours a day, 9 months position.
Okay.
The student's IEP stated that he had a 1-to-1 parapro.
Okay.
The student changed his schedule to only a half day due to a job placement in the afternoon.
Okay.
So then you create there were 4, that having 4 positions very similar to that. Student's IEP stated 1-to-1 and the student withdrew from the district. The other was job description needed changed because you can't just say to someone, "Hey, we're changing your job completely." Mm-hmm. But it's fine. No, you have to create a new position.
Yeah.
And this is all guided by the terms of these master contracts that exist, between whether it's our classified, our certified unions. I mean, we have to abide by those things as well. So those 4 different parapro positions that you may have seen in the meeting minutes as being abolished. And what we then did is create, I don't say we, was brought to the board. We don't create these day-to-day things. It's then brought to the board for approval. In the work session that we had before, this was explained to us in great detail. So then when you go to the board meeting and we see that, what you're seeing in the public is you're thinking, oh, well, they're just, blowing through these things, whatever. We had a work session before. We had all these materials presented to us before and ample time to ask those questions. Mm-hmm. So when it comes time to the meeting, then we're able to sit and approve those business things because we know exactly what's happening. So the challenge, I think, is the general public, everyone that's watching, they may not know that. Sure. And want an explanation. So that is where I say, please ask. We would love to explain that. Someone asked me about that. So here, I was able to give her all of this information and really kind of assuage that worry because she's saying, "Oh, absolutely." Because she said specifically to me, "Hey, Laura, I don't like this. I don't like that we're taking away parapros from students." That did not happen. No students had any services taken away from them.
Yeah, because I think the last intention is to make any student, whether they're typical, gifted, or mm-hmm. special need, be at a disadvantage. You know what I'm saying? And
Oh.
taking away a paraprofessional from a student who might have an IEP or is special needs is a huge detriment to them. And
Well,
that's not the point. You know what
right.
I'm
Yeah,
saying?
that is not
Yeah,
what's happening. And a decision
exactly.
like that occurs with a meeting of that entire IEP team.
Yes.
Parents are part of that IEP
Yes.
team.
I've
So,
been
yeah.
I've been in a meeting or two as a
Same.
teacher and as a parent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, sitting on the parent side versus sitting on the teacher side, it's even more anxiety
Oh.
because like I understand at a professional level what these guys and females have to do, you know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
now I'm sitting here as a parent and I'm like, I may be a little bit more pushy, I might be a little bit more demanding of answers, and I'm like, man, I really got to step back because I remember being on the teacher side of this, sitting with the paraprofessional and being like, hey man, calm down, like she's doing everything she can
I
do,
know.
you know?
But we're
And then
parents, right?
exactly.
And we feel we are driven by that emotion that we want the best for our child.
Exactly. And
That's
it's
hard.
just stressful because like with my son, he can't talk, he can't like verbalize things to me. So it's kind of like, man, I really need to be able to know that this person is
Right.
going to do not just the best, but the absolute best. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Well, and that
so-
is why all of those protections are in place
absolutely.
and they are needed because
Mm-hmm.
our students, a lot of them, they cannot
Yeah.
speak for themselves. They cannot,
Yeah.
and that is why it is so imperative that that is a team, and you know
Yes.
that our parents and that we're working with us and that we're aware of these things as well.
Yes.
And that those are all federally protected rights.
Yeah.
And you know, it's that's something I feel really strongly about
Sure.
is that our parents have the resources and are given those tools to understand that they're a part of this team, they're a part of these decisions, and the goal of everyone has the right to, you know, to public education.
Yes.
That is your right, you know,
Yes.
and so it's really important that we serve our students.
Yes.
So real quick,
Yes.
so I'm just looking. So this says an explanation from September board meeting. Here, let me just switch over so anybody watching can see what I'm looking at here. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Let's see, we'll just copy this.
Those are the minutes from the September meeting. So,
Right.
yeah.
So yeah, I was just
So
I
you'd
was trying to
want,
figure out which resolution in here would be the one we need to find.
It is on September 20th. So let's see here. Minutes, because I brought that with me as well, because I wanted to be able to give you that information. Okay, so you're going to look under, it is
9/11.
2023-77, 9.02, 9.03.
9.03. So let's go here.
No, that's not it.
That's not it?
No, that's the emergency plan. So
Is that 903 though? That's 903, correct?
yeah, it says 902 and 903. It's in the personnel report.
So let's
And it
look
might have
at
been pulled
two.
out. So
Creation of positions. That's nutrition. Maybe that was from, well, here, let's go.
that's October.
So, okay. So it would be under the,
So you're going to go to the September 20th regular board meeting.
all right, here, let me exit out of this. If I can. Maybe not. All right. So we're going to go September 20th, regular board meeting. I think that's what that said.
So it'd be on.
So 90 creation of position.
There we go.
Yep. There
This
you go.
is it?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? All right.
So you're seeing create, and these are the reasons that the positions were created.
I'm sorry. Give me 1 second here.
No problem.
So, paraprofessional behavioral unit / PE. What does the PE stand for?
So I would.
There we go.
I'm gonna guess, not knowing, is would be behavior, whether it's behavioral unit and I don't know if additional job responsibilities. When I see PE, I think physical education.
That's literally what I
Don't
was
quote
just
me on
thinking.
that. I am not 100% certain.
Because physical education.
But it may be in accompanying the behavioral unit.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
but again, I couldn't say that.
Sure,
With
yeah.
So there we have the abolition.
Yeah. So those are abolished, and here's
and then the other one is creation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this is a kind of the basic detail of what takes place in that.
Okay.
So there were no jobs, no individuals were eliminated.
Okay. So those professionals, those paraprofessionals, they're still with Ashtabula. They're just
in these
reassigned a new
other
position.
4 positions. Correct.
All right.
Anytime a position changes, just like with a bus route, if a bus route changes in any way, shape, or form, even with the addition of more stops or streets, we have to abolish and create.
What about the assistant superintendent position? That is no longer.
That has not been filled. No.
Is it an open?
No, it is not open.
So it's not even a position available.
It's not a position that exists right now.
So when people, question that, why are we getting rid of an assistant superintendent when we're the biggest district in the county? Why would we do such a thing?
Well, we didn't get rid of an assistant superintendent. Our assistant superintendent resigned in July, and she took an opportunity that she wanted to take, and for a variety of reasons, and we did not we didn't, I guess, recreate that position or post that position because we had just gone through a reduction in force and 39 positions were eliminated. And we are really, and our superintendent is very committed to ensuring, that we work within that budget. And, I really I definitely applaud her in that, in saying that, hey, that those roles and those tasks that were under that umbrella of assistant superintendent were reassigned to other individuals that that are there in different positions that are able to fulfill those roles. So just because the title doesn't exist, it doesn't mean the work isn't being done.
So it's kind of like a delegation. Hey, we have this role, we no longer have this, but the tasks now go to the most qualified person to.
They're in the right fit of, the individuals that can do those things. Now that's administrative.
Right.
So with administrative positions, that is not, they don't fall into that certified or classified union in those master contract and agreements that, are guided by that abolishment and recreation of positions.
Right. But even still, why would we choose to have a reduction in force for the assistant superintendent? I mean, again,
she was not part of the reduction in force. So the reduction in force was 39 positions. After that, and that took place in June, the assistant superintendent resigned her position in July. And the decision, was made that, hey, we don't need to fill that position because those tasks and those, everything that falls under that, there are individuals that can take those on.
Right. No, and I understand what you're saying, but why would we not? And I understand that you can delegate those out, but if something were to happen to the superintendent, I mean, you already have a situation where we didn't have a superintendent for a good while, and it was even a struggle to find an interim superintendent. And then if something were to happen again, you have people calling for the removal of the current superintendent.
I don't think people are. I think one individual is.
Okay, fair enough. Either way, if something were to happen where we didn't have a superintendent, who's going to step up into that place?
Well,
why would we not have an assistant superintendent?
But we never had it. We didn't have an assistant superintendent until 2 years ago. So Dr. Washington took on that role. I think it was about 2 years ago. That was not her title before. And we had, other individuals in central office. So the superintendent role, it's not like the president and vice president, where if the president, is down, then we have the vice president step in. There are other extraordinarily qualified professionals within that central office that could take on those jobs.
Principals?
Within buildings, there are building principals. I don't believe we have many vice principals at all. I think the high school does. So the high school, and that's a lot larger with a lot of students.
I guess that's an interesting change from when I was in school.
Yeah, a lot has changed. Yeah, exactly. But no,
I can't remember, like when I was in elementary school, there was no vice principal. When I was in junior high school, no vice principal. The only time I ever had a vice principal was at Lakeside High School with Dr. Candela was our principal, and then Mr. Montanero was the vice principal. That's the only time I can
Yeah.
remember vice principal.
They
I
do
think it
have
was
assistant
like,
principals at the high school,
yeah.
but as far, I mean, our superintendent is incredibly capable, and this is a move that, you know, is made in the ability for other individuals to take on those positions. So if something, you know, God forbid, did happen to our superintendent, then, you know, certainly there are people that, you know, you could appoint into that interim role, but there are very qualified individuals that are there in that central office as well, doing the work that has always been done. So there's no hole anywhere, you know, in terms, I mean, you can say there's a hole in terms of, you know, we had a lot of people that, you know, when they leave, you miss their talent, you miss their ability. But there are other individuals that then have the opportunity to step up into different positions.
That's well, that's at least reassuring to hear, because I mean, you know, I was under the assumption, you know, you always needed that assistant superintendent. That was my assumption. And again, I'm not as educated on, you know, the board and everything like that. I just kind of thought that it was kind of like how like a president had his vice president and then had like his cabinet, you know what I mean? I kind of thought that's how that chain of, I guess, command worked, you know what I mean? And in like the last week and a half, I've just been so educated on this stuff that it really makes me more well equipped, I feel, and then people watching too, because now, you know, they're getting more access to something that they can understand more. You know what I mean? It's not as an intimidating of a thing anymore.
Exactly, but that is my point is, please ask questions.
Sure.
And send us those questions. And I know people say, well, we come to the board meeting and ask questions. Again, the policy is that, you know, you can make your public statement. Everyone has that right, and I encourage people to.
Speaking of which, so
send questions to us. We want to answer them.
With the policy, with the 15 minutes and 3 minutes per individual, you think that's a fair policy?
So I do think that's fair, but let me add a caveat to that. Before we move on to that, I do want to say, on the same site where the meeting material is available, there is an organizational chart that is in there also. I would really encourage people to look at that if you're curious. If you're curious about, you know, or how, you know, kind of where people are in that umbrella, you know, within the district. It's a great informational piece. So do I think that that's fair? Well, I think that's a great question. I think that is very standard boilerplate that is used in most and many public meetings, city council meetings, for example, many school board meetings. And it is, again, and do I agree with this? Do I not? You know, I think that people need to have the ability to ask questions and those questions be answered. Right now, as the policy stands, that is the policy. And and it's read every time. I wish people would ask those questions in writing. We want to answer you. That business meeting of the board, that it's not set up for that. And in order, you know, to be the best service to our community, I've said this before, and it's in other meetings, you know, we need to better communicate that.
I agree. I agree that you should definitely, if you have an issue with somebody, you should definitely, or not somebody, or an organization or a board, I think that you should definitely go to them, maybe send them an email, give them a phone call. But as far as like the public participation portion of the actual meetings, now I agree with, I don't think that the board should really have, you know, should be allowed to respond at that moment. I think that's fair, because, you know, people are going to, you know, throw criticism or just throw random questions that aren't relevant to really anything. And I think it's fine, especially as a whole board, you know, just everybody just keep quiet. But as far as the 15-minute, the 3 minutes, I can understand capping everybody with discretion, capping everybody at 3 minutes. But if there were 10 people in line that wanted to express their grievance with the, you know, their elected officials, if it took 30 minutes, you know, I don't see why it's capped at 15 minutes. I guess that's the part I have a problem with. And the other part I have a problem with is if somebody wanted to express something directly to a specific board member, I think they should be able to.
So one thing about that, and the 15 minutes, I don't know that I've seen, and please, I may be wrong on this, where we've said, hey, 15 minutes are up. No one else can talk. Most of the meetings that I've seen everyone gets an opportunity to, and I don't know, how, but again, policy is policy. So I also can't sit here and say, let's not do the policy. And I apologize. The second half of your statement, I had a great answer for that.
As far as the directing messages?
Yes, to a specific board
yes.
member. Okay. When we are seated at that Board of Education table, what an individual member says, you are speaking on behalf of the entire board in a board meeting. And that's something really important to remember. And that's what, I think has been very challenging. But
Right.
you'll read that in any structure. And so I cannot sit and give you my Laura Jones opinion,
No,
back
that's
or
not,
answer
that's not
back.
what I'm, that's not what I'm saying. That's not
But
what
we
I'm
should
saying.
be able to answer people's questions.
No, that's not. No, that's
So
not what I'm saying.
I apologize. I'm
No,
not
that's all right. No,
understanding.
I agree that board members shouldn't. That's not the opportunity for them to answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that if somebody has something to say or a question, they should email or give a phone call. But I think that the public, the citizen, the taxpayer, should be able to address during the public participation portion. Should be able to address members of the board directly instead of addressing the board as a whole or addressing only the president of the board. I think if I have a problem with Laura Jones, I'm going to say, Laura Jones, I have got this problem with you. This is why I think I should be able to do that.
Well, I guess my question would be in matter of, kind of decorum and process. Did you email me, call me, or reach out to me? And did I respond to you before you came to the board meeting and address that?
No, I agree.
Because I think that's really important. Our goal is not to sit here at this table and not to be helpful.
Right.
But we are, again, we're bound by, these meeting rules and policies. And I will tell you this as well. Back in 2017, I went to a lot of board meetings and I got up and I spoke and I addressed things to the board members. And I didn't understand at that time, like, why aren't they answering me back? Or I feel so strongly with this and passionately. And that's a little bit, kind of my evolution in this process and being a board member is I understand it now. Does it mean that I would have liked it back then? I didn't love it. I thought, I only have 3 minutes. I have so much more to say. And that was really hard.
Yeah.
But now sitting here, I understand the need for those rules of order also. And again, I keep going back to this, but I can't stress it enough is that, I just feel like I want every parent and all of our students to be equipped with this same information and tools to be able to have any challenge that they have, any, question that they have. If they say, I don't like that, this kind of thing, to know that you can reach out to us. We will answer you. I'm never going to let someone sit there in, silence and not get an answer back from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're put there to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I understand the need for decorum and, and just an order. But I still think, because there may be, not specifically this board, but I imagine there are instances out there where maybe somebody's reached out to a specific board member and they haven't replied and they've done, and the citizen feels like nothing's, their voice isn't being heard. So they have to bring it to the board.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I work really hard to, anytime anyone's reached out to me, I document everything, every phone call, every email, everything and where we're at in that process. Did I hear back from the parent? Did it, any of those things? Because it is really important for everybody to know that they're seen and they're heard. The other thing that I think is really hard, and that when you look at the school board, you think, I'm going to the school board. They'll answer, have the answers. But we are also bound to follow that chain of command in things. Our role is not in the day-to-day. So a lot of times we'll say, hey, have you spoken to your building principal about this? And, they say, no, I wanted to take it directly to you and say, okay, in this process, in order for me to help you effectively, these are the steps we have to go through, because I cannot, swoop in and, say to the building, why didn't you do your job or anything like that? That's not my role as a board member. We need to ensure that we're all, following this pattern. And that is hard to do. I get it. As I have been there. I still sit in that place, as a parent where I'm over here going, where's my, what's going on?
What happens when people are in the higher part of the chain of command, maybe there's an issue with them, I guess specifically is the one with that Tim Fleming had brought up, regarding the superintendent allowing her husband use the gym facilities? What happens when the superintendent is the one that's breaking policy or something like that? Who holds the superintendent accountable?
So I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to say, if you go through the policy and anything, policy wasn't broken in that, and that instance that occurred, and anything that's a discussion of personnel takes place in executive session. And so that is not something, as a board, that I can't talk about personnel in an open session. So I would challenge and ask, are there other instances of individuals using the gym? Is this something that takes place? Was permission granted for the use of that gym? Do we know the answers to that?
Yes.
Do you know, was permission given to the individual to use the gymnasium?
Permission was given. However, how did that individual enter the gym?
With permission.
With permission, but
yes.
the doors are locked. How did they get in?
Well, here's the thing. With that instance in particular, they got in as anyone else would get into the gymnasium in the same way that a coach would, or a teacher that was there as well. And that's not something that I can talk about right now. I can't talk about any personnel matters, that takes place again in executive session, and I can't break that.
No. So, I mean, but that person, they don't have a key to get in, did they? Because it was after hours, correct?
Well, I think that a lot of practices, open gyms, things with coaches, kind of typically they'll take place after school hours. But I will tell you, that's a topic that has been created into this giant tumultuous issue. So I would ask this then, is let's also ask maybe why that board member isn't questioning the 6 other people that also get into the gym utilizing the key fob that was, given to them, whether on a keychain or anything like that. But I know we're only in this instance, but I can't talk about it because it's personnel. So what I can say with all fidelity and, truthfulness, was there you classify this as a safety or security breach? Absolutely not. Our superintendent has the right or ability to say, yes, this person can use this facility. But I really can't talk about a personnel issue. So.
Okay. So who holds the superintendent accountable?
The superintendent, the board is.
So if
if
an issue was brought up, if an issue similar to this was brought up, is there discussion?
Absolutely.
Is there discussion on it, or
what?
what?
This is the part that I think isn't told to everyone, or you don't know. There absolutely is. Do you really think something like that would happen? We'd never talk about it. There'd never be phone calls. There'd never be a meeting. There absolutely was discussion. The board president had that discussion, or handled this matter, and it was talked about in a work session with the board as well. The superintendent shared information with us also. There's nothing that's happening that doesn't merit discussion or is this cloak or cloud of secrecy or anything. And, to create this supposition that there's, the breaking of rules or things done without permission or awareness, that's just not happening.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess you said you can't get too deep into it.
Well, there's really nothing to get deep into.
Well, I mean, there is, because, to be frank, Lisa Newsom, she allowed her husband to use her key fob to enter the school.
Students, coaches, teacher were there with permission.
And the coach shouldn't have even been there, correct?
I don't, again, I'm not going to talk about personnel.
Right. Okay. But was Lisa Newsom there when her husband was there?
Was she on the premises?
Was she there to open up the door with her key fob, or was she not there?
Her key fob was on her keychain for her car keys.
And her husband used the key fob to open the door?
With permission, the doors were unlocked at the school.
Are administrators allowed to loan out their key fobs?
There was no loaning of key fobs with that. It was kind of similar to any instance where a coach says, "Hey, I need to access the building for this open gym with these students," and maybe I'm handing this. You're going in and anything else. The situation that you're talking about was discussed with the superintendent. Everything has been explained. Any action that needed taken, whether coach, anything else, that was all handled. And again, we can't talk about personnel.
Sure.
And
No, I'm just curious
no,
if it's in your policy to allow people to give somebody else their key fob to enter the school so they could get in.
if someone hands something or has that and is utilizing it with permission and is going there and saying, which set of keys did I grab? The ones that had my fob on them or the one that had your fob on them? And an honest mistake was made, that could happen.
It could. Was her husband part of the? Was he contracted with the school at that time?
Again, I can't talk about personnel. So, you know,
I
I
mean,
was
it's
he
a
contract?
simple
No,
yes or no.
I mean, was not the basketball coach at that time. There's also a teacher coach present there that is an employed teacher at the school.
Is there because you have to submit a request to use the facilities, correct?
You know, that policy, the requests that are submitted, that can be submitted. I don't know if that's done in writing or I don't know. I'll have to ask because I do know there are several other coaches that have done that and used the gym in the same open gym setting. And I've just been consistently surprised that that's never been brought up as well, because there seems to be oftentimes a focus on particular individuals. So, you know, but that's a great point. So I guess we'll have to go through that list of everyone and make sure that everyone is adhering to that policy. I think
agree.
that's really important.
I 100% agree.
I really do.
And I say that because I am a basketball coach who uses schools, Ashtabula area city schools for practice, but I know there's a policy and a procedure that has to be done, and a lot of times money that needs to be paid in order to use a basketball gym for hours.
Right. But I will say our Lakeside students, we're not going to charge our Lakeside kids money to come and utilize the gymnasium. For our Lakeside basketball players, I'm never going to get behind saying, hey,
no,
kids,
and I'm not saying
come in on an afternoon, but you've got to pay to come there.
Right.
But I understand with contracts with different organizations,
right,
and whether that facility use policy is, you know, signed early on in that process, there absolutely need to be processes, are processes. Did I at any point in the understanding and explanation of this feel like anyone's safety was a challenge or anything like that? Absolutely not.
okay, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
No, that's
But
fair.
I think that's a great question.
I just want to make sure that,
but
that everybody's following the procedures, because I mean,
Absolutely.
you have to look at it from, especially with a lot of the things that have been said. I mean, you feel like, which has been actually this word has been brought up on both the podcasts we've done so far, is nepotism. I mean,
love that. Yeah.
I guess the first question I would have regarding that, is it true that was Matt Newsom, is he your first cousin?
Matt is absolutely my first cousin.
Okay. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I just want to clear the air because I haven't heard it denied. I haven't heard you confirm it. So I just wanted to be sure. So, so that is true. Matt Newsom is your first cousin.
Absolutely.
And can you see where there would be a possible conflict of interest in that situation in particular?
I have nothing to do with Matt's employment within the district. I did not hire him. You know, I have nothing to do with that. I believe, when was it I came on the board in August. He was already the basketball coach. I have no, say in anything taking place there. I have nothing to do with whether it's disciplinary or the things that don't even exist, but I'm on the board. I'm not the athletic director. I'm not the high school principal. I'm not the superintendent.
Right.
So in that tenure, while he was the basketball coach, our superintendent, Mark Potts, was the superintendent. John Rubicic was the superintendent. And I believe that position ended in the spring. And I've never had any interaction whatsoever in anything having to do with that. So I see where you're going with this. And the question would be, okay, then, so then you're related to Lisa, right? So I'm related to Lisa by marriage. So when originally a superintendent search took place, this was before I was on the board. This would have been in the spring of 2022. Now you have to remember that sometimes, I worked for Leadership Ashtabula County. I have a lot of exposure to different individuals in all different careers. One of the things that we did for years is we visited the Early Learning Center. We visited, different schools in Asheville area city school districts. And Lisa Newsom presented to our class very often. She actually was also, when my son was at the Early Learning Center, she was the principal there. So I had a lot of professional exposure to her. And when it comes to something, like talking about being related, and we'll kind of get to that and that, the nuts and bolts of that. So when she applied for that position, she had called me and said, "Can I list you as a professional reference?" That's, I think, the fifth time in my tenure at Leadership Asheville County where I've been asked to provide a reference for a school superintendent. Knowing her professionally, I said, absolutely.
Right.
So I wrote a letter of reference for her to the board. Well, I did that actually a little later because no one ever called me. I kept waiting for a phone call, a call of reference. So I said, oh, well, I'm going to send this in just because this is what I do whenever anyone asks me for a professional reference. So I did that. At that point, two board members acknowledged that they received it. I didn't hear from anyone else. Time moves forward. They didn't hire a superintendent.
Right.
So that was far before I was on the board. So getting back to that piece of the puzzle about, where you hear this term nepotism. So Lisa's worked in the district for 25 years. I've been on the board for 1. So are we going to thusly discount any work that she's done in the course of those 25 years? And I'm over here as a board member because she's married to my cousin. So when it comes to the idea of nepotism, the Secretary of State, the Ohio Revised Code, has a very clear explanation of, what a conflict would be with a family member. This does not fall into that. Do you know how I know? Because I consulted with our board legal counsel and asked when we entered into the superintendent search, is this a conflict? No, it is not. Called the Secretary of State's office to make sure as well. No, it is not. So there was no issue in that in terms of the Ohio Revised Code. Now, should I feel embarrassed, ashamed, or deny that there is a professional, educated, qualified woman who's married to my cousin? Absolutely not. And what I have the ability to do, and what most of the professionals I work with do as well, is you can separate those things out. My husband works in a public-facing position. We've served, in different capacities where we'll be, I worked as a board member, well, I say worked, but volunteered as a board member for the Growth Partnership. And, there were things that came up that maybe impacted his municipality. And I had the ability to remain a neutral and professional, person through that. And that's called integrity. And that's what you do. And there is no gain to me by any family member serving in the district. What is that gain to me? I am a professional who is appointed into this role. Do I have the qualifications to be in that role? You better believe I do. I absolutely do, and I'll stand by that. And am I always going to do the right thing, even if it meant voting against a family member or a friend? I absolutely am. So I would say that would be my challenge to any of those things.
Okay. And now I guess my question would have been, what I think basically it had to be a straight up commitment, like you just said. How can you assure people that there's no conflict of interest? And I'm sure you can see how people could come to this conclusion.
Sure, absolutely. Is show me what I have done in my time that shows there's a conflict of interest. So I'm going to give you another great example.
Okay.
So in this, in our course of our superintendent search, we worked with the Ohio School Board Association, and they had a representative that was going to work through that process with us because the board had, the search hadn't culminated in a candidate in the spring. So we're going to go through this again. So they said, okay, we're going to pull in these professionals to do this. So they had a process all lined out. We were to follow this process. So a part of that process was submitting questions ahead of time so that every single candidate was asked the very same questions. And then when we arrived at the interview, we were given a script because each board member had submitted some questions, all of that. So all of the board members did except one. So that one board member had no interest in it being a, kind of a fair and balanced, process, because in order to be fair and with parity, every candidate had to be asked the same questions, right? I mean, that's pretty fair. But we had a board member that refused to participate in that process. And so did that start to, kind of muddy that process? I think so. Is that board member, related to anyone, there? No. But why would they do that? That's a great question. So going forward and how you can be assured and people can answer that question is, number one, look at my track record. And you can pull up anything that you want to find in my time and tenure at Leadership Ashtabula County or my service to the community. And I know what I stand for. And, the same things, that I stood for as a parent of a student, that needed advocated for, I'd stand for any parent and any student out there. And in terms of my professional integrity and a relative, I'm not responsible for the 25 years of experience that Lisa Newsom put in. But what I would say is if you have any questions about that process is, you can do a public records request of, different things from that. And if anyone, wanted any information on that, I'd happily help them. So getting back to that OSBA process. So all of the candidates, it goes into a portal online. And so you can access their references, you can access their resumes. They had to take an online test as well. And if you have any curiosity about how the candidates, did on that as well, you can records request those things. So we can give you the example, in the public, you can really see, hey, how did these candidates do in this process? So
I might get that information from you. I'd be curious to see.
Absolutely. So through that, so we had a first round of interviews. The OSBA had kind of, they made sure that the candidates that they presented to us in this portal met all of the requirements. And so we had a first round of interviews. And you could see from that first round of interviews, you saw a lot of the candidates. These were long interviews as well. And from that, we narrowed that down to then 3 candidates. And they were going to have a second round of interviews. Before that, we were given the opportunity to call and contact our references. Now, I want you to bear in mind, we were paying the OSBA $10,000 for this process. So we want this process done well. So we were assigned references to call, and they weren't, the references are, the candidates had submitted, those were on the list, but the individual from the OSBA had pulled names from, we kind of didn't know where, and she sent an email, and I actually brought that with me in case you ever, you want a new record of this, saying that, well, sometimes I'll pull names from the community that, maybe the candidates might know, and assign them to you to call as well. And I thought, that's odd. I mean, how... Okay, but we'll do that. So there's a candidate from a district a little bit further away that was not local to here. And I called a couple of those references, and I noticed a couple of them said, we don't know her. I have no idea who she is. And then I saw on the list of some of our local candidates as well. And I thought, this individual just started in this position, and it has nothing to do with the schools, and it's out there in the community. And I know that he does not know this candidate. And so I called the OSBA rep and I said, why are you giving us references that number one, they maybe never heard of the candidate or don't know them? And she said, well, I do that and again, I have it in writing. She said, I just, I thought maybe for example, the president of that area chamber might know one of the candidates. It's a small town, right? That not necessarily.
That's
wild. Isn't that wild? And
Right.
So I pointed that out and I said, that's not fair to any of these candidates to do that. We need references that know them.
Can I see that email?
You absolutely can.
Can I?
And that was something that was kind of thrown out to me as, said, oh gosh, you changed the process or tried to impact the process. So and you sure can. So right here is another. I brought a lot of things with me. So we'll go back to the original. I got that too. Okay, so this is the original email that you'll see that she said that I've got telephone reference. First of all, you don't need, I've attached this list, the candidates, no calls are wait, not that part. Okay, I work to find a variety of people who I'm assuming do or should have working relationships with your finalists, whether in a district, a formal district, a neighboring district, or partner district. And, it says I'm not sure they're a big fan or not, but, I work to find a variety of people. And then if you go back, and then you'll see, she said, hey, I've been informed this person would not know her at all. And what she doesn't reference here is that there were several others, that didn't have any idea who the candidates were. And so that's what happened.
All right. So just taking a look at this. So this is a reference change for Lisa Newsom, removing Greg Church as a reference, inserting Kelly Jones.
And I did not request any, that person be placed as a reference. I think she was a reference for another candidate. She was on that list.
Yes, she was. But I can see why there would be cause concern that you're even involved with changing of any references, especially when it comes from the person who's the wife of your first cousin. You see how that can be concerning?
If we weren't all professionals, maybe, but I
think a
profession.
saying we're all professionals, I think that can be like almost like just glazing over it.
Oh, absolutely
right?
not. Absolutely. No, I see what you're saying here. But what I'm saying is I simply pointed out because had I not pointed that out, so we're paying $10,000 for us to randomly be calling people that don't know any of these candidates.
I'm just curious why none of the other references were changed on any of the other candidates.
I think that'd be a great question to email Cheryl Ryan and ask her that.
Okay, that's a fair question. Yeah, but you can see how the concern is, especially whenever Lisa Newsom is the only one who had a reference changed.
She's not the only one. There are candidate who was from another district. There were 3 individuals that did not know her at all that were on that list. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Cheryl doesn't reference it here, but they weren't even.
Mind if I see this one more time?
Yeah, she does not reference that there, but they said we don't know that individual.
So did she insert other references for the other candidates as well?
She did not. But feel free to call her. You absolutely can to verify that information. I can give you her contact information. And I did not at any point say, hey, put someone else in there. And you'll note in there, she says, call other people in her other email. You can call anyone. So there was what she was doing was adding another name to the list so that she was assigning and making sure at least 2 people were called for every reference. But you'll note in there, it says, call anyone you want.
Right.
Don't limit it.
Yeah, I did see that. But I also see, she says, because I don't live in your community, don't know who's moving in and moving out, etc. Sometimes results that I provide a name that will simply say, I don't know that person enough to really provide comment. Mm-hmm. She said, that's fine. I think that's fine is very important because she's aware that some of these references are not going to know this person.
But until I pointed that out to her, she did not acknowledge that.
Right, but let's just go back here. The names on each list may or may not be in the candidate's application package. Work to find you. I'm assuming do or should. So she's aware that there may not be any relationship.
Well, but she's assuming they are. And that was my point, is that if we're employing this group to do this work, is provide us with a list of references that know our candidate, or at least show me that you put some work into putting the list together.
Okay.
Show me that you did work in putting the list together, that you didn't just go in the phone book and say, who's the mayor of this town? Do they know? I'm going to write them down. Because I don't think that's fair to anyone.
True. But I understand that. But I think, I don't think it's fair to the other candidates that only one of their references would be changed. And it comes after a call from you. But the other references,
but interestingly enough, on another candidate, all of her references knew her. So is that fair then?
Well, I would say yes. And the reason I say that is because Cheryl Ryan is not familiar with our city, our town, our just anybody, right? So these are people that she had no bias in choosing any of the references, whether they knew them or not. It just happened to be the luck of the draw. It's completely random. So I think that is very fair.
Well, I mean,
people win the lottery.
Point. But here's the thing. Anybody could have gone right ahead and still called him.
True.
And gotten that answer. This was simply me pointing out, are you doing your job? That was me pointing out.
You're saying call Cheryl Ryan or
no, could have called Greg Church. Absolutely.
Right.
All she's saying here is that I've been informed that he won't know her well enough to provide a professional reference. So here's another reference for that number 7 call. There's no one saying don't call this person. Okay. They're saying we're adding another name in there in case this person says, I don't know her. At no point does she say, don't call him.
I understand.
And that's not the point. And the point is, my goal was to make sure that everyone had a fair shake and that this individual who's providing this professional service to us was doing so.
So you abstained on the vote for Lisa Newsom. Any particular reason why?
There is a particular reason, because we went through this process again, and it was very clear. I mean, it was clear to me. I didn't have to say, I didn't add a whole heck of a lot to that conversation at all. And I abstained on the vote because I knew
based on some of the statements that had been made, I received a letter and a phone call from an individual who had gotten a call from a board member who instead of asking about the reference, instead launched into basically a tirade about me personally, attacking me personally, making a lot of terrible comments. And she was very uncomfortable with it and sent a letter to the board saying this is going on, breaking executive session information. And she was very uncomfortable. And so I knew in some way, shape, or form that someone on the board would potentially say, well, this isn't valid. We should all, she's related to her. And I was not about to allow that to overcast in someone getting hired. So I did not vote on the hiring of the superintendent.
Right. So
she was hired without my vote.
So this is 10 days prior to her appointment. Mm-hmm. So don't you think that should have been a thought when you called OSBA? Maybe I shouldn't get involved. We're too close. This is too closely related.
My thought was to treat every single candidate exactly the same.
Yeah, but you can see how it's a little unfair, right?
How is it unfair?
Because there's an element of possible unfairness, especially when you're so related.
But I need you to tell me how it is unfair. How is it unfair for Lisa to have a list of references for people to call whoever they wanted? How is it unfair for me to point out that OSBA was not doing their job properly? So I don't know how that is unfair. But I will say, I can see where people would say, hey, they're related. Right. What I can also say is I'm presenting you with the facts. So you have the opportunity to take those facts and say, oh, I get it. I understand. Or say, that's strange to me. So I did not vote on Lisa's hiring. I chose not to. And there are 5 people on the board, and the other 3 individuals, three individuals voted for, 1 did not.
Right.
I abstained.
Right.
So I'm not responsible for her being hired.
No, and I'm not saying you are.
Yeah.
I'm saying
calling or not calling someone and me double checking that, guess what? I have a responsibility to the taxpayers. If we're paying $10,000 for someone to do a search, then they're going to do their job. And they're not just going to throw a list against the wall of people we don't even have phone numbers for, or people who may or may not know them, anything else like that. Okay, she explained her reason behind that. But I pointed out, why do we have someone on this list that doesn't know a candidate? I don't understand that. And is this a valuable use of our time?
I understand your concern. I understand where your concern would come
from. My point is, that is how I look at something. I never looked at it from the standpoint of that's someone, married to my cousin. I looked at it from the standpoint of that's a candidate.
You did, though, because you considered you consulted legal counsel.
At the beginning of the process, not when I checked on.
If you consulted legal counsel at the beginning of the process, that means
it wasn't illegal.
To make sure, right? But you were at least cognizant enough to know, hey, this is pretty close. We should even double check to make sure we're not doing anything out of the, outside of what we should be doing. But
I knew it was okay, but I wanted it in writing and by everyone else so that everyone else had that understanding.
Right.
But because I wanted to make sure that there was no issue regarding transparency. So, do you feel better knowing that it was legal and not an act of, the definition of, nepotism or favoritism?
Look, I said it on the last podcast. Yeah. I don't have any problems with, if I know somebody that I think would be a good fit for a job, whether they're related to me or not related to me, I'm still likely going to recommend them if I think they're going to do a good job.
That's how I feel.
I don't have a problem. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think my concern would come whenever I see, okay, if they're related, but she's calling about references. She submitted, she's already backing the candidate because she submitted a reference letter.
Originally, when she applied in the spring.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was actually only a couple of days before you showed interest in.
No, because the superintendent search took place in the spring of 2022. The application to be on the board was in July.
You wrote your letter, I believe it was in June, and
my letter to be on the board,
your reference letter for Lisa Newsom in June, and then you submitted your interest letter in July.
Let me look. So it was in a couple days. Let me see. I've got to see when they were going through that process. I did bring that with me because I wondered if that would come up. Because it's something I hear from time to time. But I mean, I'm a private citizen. I'm pretty sure I can give someone a reference. And it was
I
a
agree.
professional reference.
I agree. No, I just, like I said, I don't have a
no,
problem
absolutely.
of
Listen, I appreciate you asking these questions because I feel like people want to know the answers. And I think it's really important.
right.
So I appreciate it very much. All right, let me find that. I brought a lot of files with me.
I see that.
I know, it's really important. So, station. And I labeled them really well, but clearly not.
Not well enough.
Resume. I know, resume and letter. Oh, here's my letter of recommendation for Lisa Newsome. It's dated April 11th, 2022.
Okay. And
so
then,
the school board, applying for school board, when was that? June 24th, somewhere around then, July deadline,
so
maybe?
your letter for your interest in the school board was maybe in June then?
Yeah, so
Correct.
it was a couple months.
2 months.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also, gosh, I'm trying to think who else I did letters of reference for around that time. I mean, it's a pretty typical.
So I have another question. So whenever Tim Fleming initially made the motion to appoint Lisa Newsome as the interim superintendent, he didn't even receive a second, and you were on the board at that time.
Yeah.
Any particular reason why you didn't second
100%. Absolutely. I will tell you why I didn't second that. Because we were not, number one, in the hiring process. And we had not even entered in, there was no discussion about that. I was not going to act on my own on that. With Mr. Fleming, there are 3 other board members there.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't heard any, reason, yes or no. There was no discussion on it. And that completely blindsided, Lisa as well. She had no idea that was going to take place. How did we even know at that point that she was interested in that also? So maybe the right way to do that would have been to have an executive session or have a work session, say, hey, we need to work on this. Maybe we should talk about appointing her, and then, everybody getting on the same page. But I had no information about what, this was never brought up, and that wasn't fair to anyone there. And so talking about that, and when we talk about, nepotism and any of those things, boy, that would have been a great move, right? And for me to say, absolutely, Mr. Fleming, I second that motion. Let's appoint Lisa. No, we're going to go through the proper process on that. And I feel pretty strongly about that. Okay. And we did.
Yeah. So it boiled down to 3 candidates: Dr. Washington, Lisa Newsome, and Miles. What was it? Who? Jody Miles. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not familiar with Jody Miles. She's from another district or
yes,
somewhere
and
else?
I apologize. I should have brought. I actually have it in the car. I have a book because I keep notes of everything, I can't for the life of me remember her district right at this point. So I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. I was just curious because I'm not familiar. So like during that hiring process, was it pretty apparent when it came to actually picking the person for superintendent, like who it was going to be? I know there was a motion to end the executive meeting, and then I believe there was a motion. Let me remember.
No,
this
it's okay.
correctly.
There's a motion made by Mr. Nemi, I believe, to appoint or to enter into the contract negotiate, something like that. It was the one I
and then there was
correct?
Yes, there was, and then there was discussion about it.
Now you've got to remember at this point in time, things that take place in executive session and about hiring, I'm not going to divulge details of that.
I'm not asking for that.
No, but I want to make sure people know that that's, I'm not going to talk about our, candidates and those kind of things in there. However, we had been at this, for obviously a couple months long process, but we were meeting late in the evenings. We had gone through that. Each of these candidates in that first round had given us 2 hours of their time as well. And within that first round, we had a lot of discussion on who to move forward with. Anything. So then when
You're
they
saying
came
in the first round,
within that first round,
okay,
and talked about at great length, and this was hours and hours. And when we moved into that second round of interviews and in that process, and we received those results from the testing and anything else, and, those references were called, and, and again, you can call anyone,
right.
So I simply made the point that to the school board that, hey, I would expect a little more due diligence. That's all. So we were already at a point, a lot of discussion had taken place. If at that point, after those final interviews, after everything else, I would say that for the most part, it was very, I'm trying to look for the best way to say this because I don't want, again, to betray anything from executive session. Do I believe that the best candidate, that the candidate who was appropriate for the position was very clear? I absolutely do.
And it seems like, the discussion process after the second round of interviews was not very long at all, correct?
So,
and that's the only reason I asked, because it was a very fast discussionary period after the interviews concluded.
I think at that point, what more is there to say? We had spent hours and hours, deliberating before.
Right.
Everything was in front of you. Everything. We were all present for all of this. What more was there to say but perhaps argument at that point? I think that things were very clear. I don't think there was anything more to say in that. I really don't. I didn't say much. I will say when, there were different times when other people, weren't allowed to talk because maybe they were being, shouted down and things like that. And that did take place. And, but again, I'm not going to get into those details of that, but there's no one, there may have been a board member that's, thought, okay, we didn't talk about this at all but there were 3 board members that felt very strongly about casting their vote, and they did. I abstained. Another board member said no. So if other board members were also feeling like, hey, I'm not sure on this, they would have verbalized that. This is a massively huge decision to make.
Right.
But I think that it was beyond a shadow of a doubt clear who the right person for that role was.
I have a quick question for you, Ms. Jones. So it's 5 people that vote, right? Okay, so 3 voted yes, 1 abstains, and 1 says no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what happened? And this isn't. This is just for like general knowledge. Like when you're doing a voting session, and say 2 people voted yes, 2 people voted no, and then there's 1 abstain. What happens at that point?
It fails. Whatever the resolution is, it fails. If it doesn't have a majority.
I'm sorry. I got lost. I got lost in the numbers.
No, it's fine. It's okay. So 5 people voting. So
okay.
In this instance, there's 1 that abstains. We're going to use my thumb for the abstain here.
Okay, that's the abstention.
1 votes no, but 3 vote yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in this case, 1 person abstains, 2 vote no, 2 vote yes.
Okay.
At that point, do you have to not abstain and then vote, or?
I have to look. Now,
question.
what we need to do is consult Robert's Rules of Order specifically on this, because I've had different things told to me that an abstention, I've heard abstention counts with the majority, but there's not a majority here.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's a great question. And I think had that instance come up, we obviously would have been, looking at that. But I don't know the answer to that, but I'll look it up.
Okay. Because I was wondering that, because when I hear the abstain, and I'm like, man, what would have happened if 2 vote yes, 2 vote no, and then you got 1 abstain? What
that feels a little like a deadlock. I don't know.
Like
so I don't know what the answer is on that one. I don't know. I mean, it's you think about all these other instances that exist. Do we call him the Speaker of the House? What happens?
No,
I don't know. Yeah. So
do we call the most tenured teacher in here and be like, hey,
I don't
what do you
think
think,
so.
bud?
Yeah, I don't think that's, I think that there's got to be some kind of procedure that exists for that.
Yeah.
So, but that did not happen.
And I apologize to interrupt the thoughts. And
no, I think it's great, because I think we're kind of belaboring. Like, you can only argue certain things for so long.
Right.
And, no one is ever, silenced or not given the chance to speak. And I think you'll see that in some meeting minutes where we've had, people say, I want to, we'll say, are there any, changes to the minutes? And instead of changes to the minutes, person will throw out, accusations, discussion, anything else, and they speak and anything else, even though per parliamentary procedure, per Robert's Rules of Order, those aren't changes to the minutes. That's your statements, but okay.
So there has been a censure on Tim Fleming, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now the censure, I mean, what does it really do, honestly? Because it's not like, I mean, is there any kind of punishment? Is there any, like,
Here's the thing.
what is the process with that?
I'll go back to this, why it is so incredibly important, why elections are important.
Mm-hmm.
You can't remove it would be incredibly hard to remove someone from office. There's an entire process with getting signatures, all of that.
Yeah, petition.
It's a signature petition. Yeah. But, even then, that's really challenging.
Right.
And, the censure, and I think I have have you seen it? I do have a copy of it if you'd like that. So, if you look at this and you read that, a censure is a statement. And this is a statement, made, and it was, the rest of the board voted on that, saying, these things are taking place that go against policy.
So the board voted on it.
We did vote on that. Yes.
Okay. So that was
I believe so. I'm sorry. Again, I've got it, signed by on the district. What's that? I'm sorry.
Was Mr. Fleming present for this as well?
He was seated there at the table when that took place.
All right. Just curious.
Yeah. And again, I'm sorry, my memory may be failing me on this one. I believe we voted on the resolution, but we can go back in the minutes and check that. So we'd have to go back and check that. So
we could do that.
Yeah, but this is the resolution of censure. So
could I see that real quick?
Absolutely.
I haven't.
So, I'm trying to think what the date of that was that took place. Because I just printed it out, the copy of it. It may have, maybe the July meeting.
So August.
Yeah. I could probably do a quick Google because I think there were articles about it, but.
Let's see. Superintendent. So.
It would be at the end, I believe.
The 28th. Plan of action. And May 5-year forecast. Other business listed.
Yeah, I don't see it there.
Yeah.
I apologize. I should have the date there and I don't. So I'm sorry. But I think if you were, I believe the Gazette did an article about it, maybe the Star Beacon, so you could probably, figure out from Googling the date there. So sorry about that.
Yeah. So like you said, what is this?
It's a statement. It's a statement. It's saying, your fellow board members, you're doing things that are outside of our role as a board, and this cannot stand. And there are also things, what happens here as well as it talks about our policy. It talks about the exercising of authority that does not exist. It talks about the violations of board policy that took place. So those are things that, happen, and there are citations to, those things are cited there, but it's a formal notice. And, this isn't, we don't want to do this. You don't want to do things like that. It's, it talks about digressing from the agenda topics and the disparagement that takes place. And there's no attempt to silence anyone or anything. Again, we have work sessions. If a board member chooses not to attend the work session, they don't have an opportunity, to ask those questions and discuss that with the board, then comes to the meeting and wants, all of this outcry of things when the explanations are there and it's been discussed, then that's a challenge, and it's not fair to the rest of the board because we have an obligation, as board members. And when you're going against those things, what you don't realize is when you're sitting up here making statements, you represent the board as a whole. And what the censure says is that does not represent us. It's not appropriate. And I'm not going to sit there and allow people to be disparaged and other things to happen. And it's wrong. It's wrong. And you can be passionate about things, and and you can also want to make these points, but that can also be done, in the whether it's in these sessions, in these meetings, anything else. But what you can't do is go into a meeting, have a meeting. You can't threaten people. You can't call people names. I mean, I guess you can, but it makes it a pretty tough working environment.
Right. So, cease and desist letters as well. Yeah. And what are those about?
So I think that it's pretty clear that, if you're an employee of any organization and that you're, the person who's, charged with being, I guess, your boss in a sense, I guess we'll use that term loosely, the board oversees the superintendent. So, to be, publicly, harassed, yelled at, anything else, accusations, and really harassment, to take place that is perceived. If an individual wants to say, no, this is wrong, and no, this should not happen, and I will pursue further action to that, they're allowed to do that. I sent a cease and desist letter to Mr. Fleming as well.
But like, what are the the cease and desist of what though? What is he ceasing and desisting?
The harassment. Can
you just give us an example?
Yeah, I've had to file 2 reports with law enforcement about comments that were made or actions that took place. Coming to a meeting and having things shouted at you, accusations hurled at you, things like that. That's pretty unpleasant.
Right, but I mean, those don't rise the level of criminality for a police report, do they?
But being in an executive session and for threatening statements to be made do.
So there were threats. Well, a threat is a crime.
If you're charged with it.
If
charges are brought, but
right,
sometimes charges aren't brought.
Right.
But at least, no one deserves to be bullied. The, antagonistic name calling. No one deserves to feel unsafe in a meeting or in a workplace ever.
But I mean, were there like threats of violence against you or
threatening statements? I mean,
such as
I wouldn't say a threat of, you would have, no one said, I'm going to, punch you in the face, but I mean, I can read to you what the statement was if you'd like, I'm happy to.
The statement that was the threatening statement?
Well, because it's also recorded in the board minutes. So
but it's not a like verbatim transcript.
There actually is. So if you go further down on the minutes from, let's find the date. So I noticed you did pull up minutes that had some statements that were made by Mr. Fleming that were just kind of statements. Hey, I want to know the minutes.
Looks like just a
if
quick
you
summary.
Scroll all the way down though, it says what is verbatim stated in this meeting. And I'll also add to that, I took verbatim notes in that meeting when that took place. Now you may say, can you take notes in an executive session? You can. Those thusly become public record. My notes are public record as well. So I have absolutely...
Just real quick while I'm here, can you show me where the verbatim is?
Because I absolutely can. Okay, so you're going to go to, let's see which ones. This is March 8th. Okay, so you're going to go to the meeting minutes from, they would have been the March meeting minutes, so probably under April.
March 23.
Yeah, I think so, because they're, check that one, go there, and so it's the March, the minutes, they'd be all the way at the top.
That's agendas, Anthony.
Yeah, I go all the way to the top. The minutes, March 2023 board meeting minutes. So go there, and you can scroll all the way to the bottom. So what you'll notice is we approved the minutes from several March meetings. There's the March 8th meeting, another meeting.
Right.
This is, 15, so you're going to want to go to the meeting that took place on March 24th. So scroll down to the bottom. So what you're going to notice here is this is the discussion that was as recorded by the secretary. This is what actually took place. This is not an amendment to the meeting minutes. This is what took place.
Right. No, but I'm saying this is, yeah, I mean, this is fine, but I wanted to see like a verbatim.
Well, go a little further down.
Okay.
Okay, so there it is. Mr. Fleming indicated, he stated that. That is exactly what he stated.
Yeah, but I want a verbatim, like a transcript, like a,
the secretary is charged with writing the minutes as what actually occurred.
I understand
So
it, but it's
it
more
is
of
not a he said, she said. There
it's
are
more of a
8
summary though. Like if you're not catching word for word what somebody
I think
says.
it's pretty word for word because I'll read it here. So Mr. Fleming indicated that it's an individual's father's reputation to be securing a position in the district. He stated clearly that there's an unwritten rule that the district try to keep positions for family members and that this is owed to her. I asked Mr. Fleming if I heard him correctly say that the district should base hiring on family relationships. Mr. Fleming responded, "I'm not talking to you." Mrs. Jones replied, "Mr. Fleming, you have verbally attacked me for the same thing." Mr. Fleming then said, "You ain't seen nothing yet. I'm not done with you." At which point, Mrs. Jones asked for the minutes to reflect that Mr. Fleming was making a threat to her. Mr. Fleming said, "You said I attacked you. That's a rebuttal." Mrs. Jones then said, "I didn't say attacked. I said verbally attacked." What you'll read in I believe there were police reports made by every attendee of the meeting about that, because, talking about the tone in which it was made, how it was made, and then there was some name calling that ensued afterward as well. So I don't think anybody needs to go to a meeting and be treated that way.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there should definitely be a level of respect.
You said it earlier, decorum. And there's couth, and there's just I feel anytime. So like I was in a fraternity in college, and we had fraternity meetings and executive board sessions. I didn't like half the guys in my fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we didn't like each other. We were just guys who lived in a house together.
Sure.
But I mean, at the same time, I mean, we're talking about approving budgets. We're talking about doing all these things, and I'm the fraternity president. We don't have the money for that, man. Like, I'm not gonna call the guy an idiot. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna. I would just be like, hey, John, like you're not thinking right. You're not thinking about the big plan picture here. I'm done talking about this with you. I mean there's a better way to say that, but at the same time, I mean I'm in complete agreement with you. If you go to a meeting, if you go to an executive session, if you go somewhere, no matter what if it's a school board, if it's like the board of directors for a company, whatever, any personal feelings that you have for someone need to be put aside, because if you're working towards a bigger goal here, which is the betterment of the lives of students, I mean, no matter what a personal feeling is, we can't let that get in the way.
And we're not getting to that work. And, I'll go back in time to my first board meeting that I attended. And it immediately descended into a little bit of chaos with some shouting. And Mr. Fleming yelled down to the other and said, "Miss Jones," and he put me on the spot and he said, "I'm making a motion for executive session. Will you second my motion, or were you just put on here to be a yes person, whatever?" And I seconded his motion to go into executive session. I wanted him to have that opportunity to speak. We got into the executive session and it descended into chaos and screaming and yelling. And, it was a mess. And there are police reports about that meeting as well and what took place there. And that was really disappointing. Because you know what? Everyone should have an opportunity to be heard.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Everybody should, and like I said, there should be a level of respect between all parties, whether you agree or disagree. I'm just curious why they're why they're cease and desist letters and police reports. Like, I haven't heard anything. You said verbally attacked in here, and then he said you haven't seen nothing yet. But I haven't seen any statements that are actually threatening. So I'm just curious why there would be.
This letter, one of the reasons that I sent it, and I'll be very clear about that. So there's a board meeting that took place, and Mr. Fleming started yelling things about a lawsuit and about me suing the district, and started talking about that. And what you will see, because I believe someone filmed that as well, it was chaos. There's a lot of yelling. What you see is you do see our legal counsel get up, and he goes over and talks to Mr. Fleming, and what needs to be understood here, maybe what I can express is when he talks about a lawsuit, there is a very specific clause in said lawsuit that it cannot be spoken about or disparage. You cannot disparage these parties, and you cannot make disparaging statements about them. And if that does I have a copy of that wording here that you can take a look at too.
Disparaging remarks about them in regards to the lawsuit.
No disparaging remarks at all. Similarly, I as a party cannot make disparaging remarks about the district.
Right.
That was asked for by the district, that they not disparage me and I not disparage them. That clause, and holds true to any and all board members, whether current or future. So in doing so, in disparaging me and doing that, you are opening up the district to possible litigation and a violation of that. It is not my goal to, come after the district for that. But what I'm going to do is protect the taxpayers and protect everyone else and not allow that to happen, because there are other parties to that suit that could do that. So as a board member, are you going to really endanger over and over again, the district in that way after you were told specifically not to? So that's where that comes into play. When it comes into a cease and desist letter, it's referring to any disparagement, any remarks that are continually made at the board meeting, it's continually, making these shouts and claims about nepotism, about, my aunt getting a raise. I don't even know what this position is, that is held by someone else, someone else that I'm related to, but that's worked there for 15 years that I had nothing to do with in any way, shape, or form. And you can't continue to do that. And you can't continue to shout harassing comments, name calling, any of those things. And the cease and desist letters, our employee is being berated publicly, calls for termination, disparagement all the time. And she's allowed to do that, a cease and desist letter. Stop. Because we can't continue to allow that kind of behavior, because we're modeling this for our students. And I'm not going to sit there and say to students, it's okay for someone to treat you that way.
Yeah, but there's a threat of a lawsuit in there with the cease and desist letter. Generally, that's what they come with. But he should be able to speak negatively about, basically whoever, right? Like if he doesn't,
can an employer shout negatively about their employee with, about all those things when it's, the board is not to discuss, personnel and things like that. Can you break all those rules? Is that okay?
I think there are ways to do it. Yes. I think there are ways that will make it okay. Yeah. I think if, you don't have to.
Do you think that is okay? I'm just curious. Do you think what has taken place is okay?
So I think
in that format, in that board meeting, you think it's okay to shout at another
No, I already said.
Right.
I think think there should be a level of respect between all parties. And I don't think shouting does anything. But I also think you should be allowed to say what you really feel or what you really think.
You think in a business meeting of the board that it's appropriate for us to take the superintendent, who we have confidence in, and from one board member to, in speaking on this platform, which when you speak on this platform, you represent the board as a whole, to say and to shout at another employee about how they do their job, about their husband, about any of those things, that is not okay.
I think those are valid questions, though.
I think that we need to hold ourselves to a better example. And if those discussions want to be had, and if you want to talk to somebody about how you feel about their job performance, there's a place and space to do it. To grandstand in public, to make it sound like there's these implications of wrongdoing and anything else, that is not okay. To stand there and say that this is what we do, we bully other people, we shout and call them names in a public meetings. There are rules against disrupting public meetings, and
right.
We're allowing that. But you know what we're saying to our kids in this district and our families? We don't value you enough to stop doing this. That's what we're saying. And I am not for that. I value our kids.
So are these issues being brought up in executive session?
Absolutely. We've talked about these things in executive session. We talked about any of these matters in executive and said, but you can't. And I'm not going to go into further detail other than what's in written reports about what takes place in executive session. But what the public does not see is a lot. And it is very challenging when you are not allowed to have a voice in the meetings because you are shouted at, disparaged, and called names. And I am not for it.
I understand. I think.
But I'm also going to say this. What I am also not going to do is anything other than recount to you facts of what happened.
Right.
I'm not going to disparage this other board member. I'm simply going to tell you, hey, this is what takes place. This is what we don't stand for. Because I'm also going to tell you something. There have been things that Mr. Fleming has said in these meetings that I agree with, that have taken place in some of our other meetings. And there have been statements and, other things that have been brought up when he has made a point. I agree with those things. And it would be wonderful if we allowed space and place for everyone's opinion. But I'm going to say right now, that does not happen. And it's not happening from it's not happening. The way that it's perceived in the public is that you think, oh, there's 4 people, we're not letting one other person talk. That is not what takes place in these meetings and these executive sessions. And that is why we cannot get work done. And it's unfair.
So you would consider grandstanding?
I would consider it grandstanding because we have, before these meetings, a work session. We offered to change the times of the work session more than once to meet, any schedules, any specifically Mr. Fleming's schedule. And, said 5 o'clock is, doesn't work. So we said, what if we have the work session at 6, the typical meeting time? No response, nothing, a refusal to come, to attend, nothing. So if you don't want to come to the table and work through these things, but you want to get in front of the general public and shout out accusations, for example, back to the parapro thing. Had he come to the meeting, he would have understood this explanation to the work session or reached out to the superintendent. But instead, you go to the board meeting and say, we're firing parapros and I'm not for that and anything else. Well, no, we owe it to the public to do the work here and to find out, not to make these generalized statements. And you know what? I know that he is capable of doing this work. Mm-hmm. And I know that he feels passionately about these students. But we need to be in a space and place that allows this work to be done. And, we need to agree on that.
Fair.
Very fair.
Fair. So I guess to start wrapping it up, I do have 2, let me see, at least one off the top of my head, one question. So who brought, I don't remember who it was, but who brought the motion to move the meetings to mornings of a Wednesday?
Like 10 a.m., I think
10 a.m.
it was.
So that discussion took place in reference to the summer meeting only. I believe it was like the July and August meeting.
Okay.
And that's where that came from.
So I was under the impression that it was supposed to last for the entire calendar year.
That's kind of what I was led to believe as well.
But so you were led to believe that. Mm-hmm. Is it stated anywhere?
I mean,
that's my, and I think it wasn't clear enough on that. And in the state, so when you say you're led to believe, I think maybe it wasn't clear.
Sure.
You know,
and that's
so,
fair.
but that was the discussion that took place, was moving it just for the summer at that time, because a lot of people had indicated, we've got, all these summer activities in the evening, anything else.
Kids have baseball,
so, right.
That kind of
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
But, I think you'll notice too, I did not, I voted against that.
Yeah, no, I was just curious whose idea that was.
Yeah. Because who thought of that one?
I think it was just thrown out for discussion, and I don't remember at this point. And if there was a motion, I don't know if I voted to table it or.
This was June, so I don't.
So it might have been in July.
Let's see, just so everybody can see what we're doing here. Yeah, I just thought it was a weird move, but.
Well, there actually, some of the districts do have their meetings during the day. So I think it was thrown out there in that discussion, but it wasn't done with any, other reason other than, hey, in the summer months, with the schedules being so different for everyone, do we want to do this? But discussion ensued.
Yes, and ultimately it failed, which I'm happy about because I think it'd be easier to get to an evening meeting. Mm-hmm. The other question I had on my mind was, when are we going to get live streamed board meetings again?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out the answer and I'll get back to you.
Is it a possibility?
I'm certain it's a possibility.
Because if so what was the reason for moving the meeting from one room to the other to begin with?
I think it was maybe attendance, or I don't know if the room was being moved. There was moving it from one room to the other, I think it was just I don't know if it's timing or anything else. I never heard specifically any reason for it. Just, we were using this space instead of this space. I don't know if it was just because we had smaller attendance and I have no idea, but it wasn't, if there was some intent behind it, I'm not aware of that. Okay. So I don't know. But I do agree though, the lack of, we definitely need the microphones and that ability. So
do you agree that they should be live streamed?
I am not against meetings, being there for the public to view, at all. I think that access to information is really powerful.
I agree.
So
transparency. I like
it's not only
transparency, but it also fosters a sense of engagement. People are more apt to be involved, maybe get more involved in the issues. Like Sam, who we had on here the
Right.
other day, Sam was like, I started going to these school board meetings because of a certain issue, and then I became more informed on things.
Me too.
And then he
Yeah.
got more, and now he's looking to run for board. So maybe someone who, might be, hey, the board isn't attained. Like, I have no way to see these guys. Hey, maybe it doesn't fit into my schedule. I work for a shift,
Absolutely.
but I'm on third shift and I got a phone.
I want to see what's going on in the district, or
Yeah.
maybe your child was receiving student of the month and you were unable to be there. So I
Yeah.
totally get it. Can I say something? I don't want to,
Absolutely.
but I spent a little time putting this together because I really felt like you two might have be interested in this.
Okay.
So what I did is I listed Ashtabula, Buckeye, Geneva, Jefferson, Conneaut. I included Chardon. I included Chardon for a very specific reason, because our state representation, our district for a representative is all of this northern part of Ashtabula County and Geauga County.
Okay.
Vastly different, right? So what I did was I made a little chart that has enrollment numbers, number of schools, what the per student money spent is, graduation rate, average teacher salary, current star rating, chronic absenteeism rate, the percentage of students of different demographics, and I thought you'd be interested in this because I think it's some pretty good information. I know someone had said Ashtabula City Schools teachers are the highest paid teachers in the county or something. That is not true. The average teacher salary in Ashtabula Area City School District is $58,580.
I think Geneva has a higher.
Buckeye is $63,000, Geneva $69,000, Jefferson $54,000, Conneaut $64,000, Chardon $73,000.
And is all this information sourced from the Ohio?
It is, exactly. So the Ohio Department of Education, if you go on their website, you can search per district and you can do comparisons. You can find all of this demographic information. I think it's really valuable, when we're, talking about these things, or when someone's, making a statement and say, hey, no, actually, this is it. Here's where you find it. Use this resource.
Yeah.
And, I feel the same way about any of that information that is on those board meeting minutes. Call me, send me an email. If you see something on there and you're saying, what is this? I don't get it. Call and ask. I will give, a shout out to Liz Pennant from the NAACP, because she said, hey, I want to know more about that. Was specifically one of the reasons, I had this information together.
For the parapros?
Yeah, because she said, I want to know about that, Laura. Can you put it in writing to me? Absolutely. I was thrilled to, be giving her that information, because I felt like, all right, this is how it works. And, but I also want to stress, I don't want it to be hard for people, because you think about that too. And people may feel like, hey, maybe someone feels like I can't reach out. And what I would encourage is, if you're uncomfortable with a certain person, you feel like maybe that person is, a bias, or I don't know them, or anything else, there is someone in the district to reach out to. And whether that's our superintendent, whether that, it's even calling, someone in the central office that you may know, or a board member, and say, I feel this way, can you help me? Or I need this information to get here. Or how do I start this process? I have a complaint. Where do I go first? And we will tell them and walk them through. There are no state secrets here. Anything, I think, like I've showed you tonight, we may have disagreed on, certain things are said about, the appearance of it, but my goal is to provide you with these facts. And I've got,
facts.
if anyone wants any information, I made a stack of files. I have lots of facts here. So I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to email you anything. It's all there. And anything that I shared tonight is all information that is accessible and available. So, or I hope to.
Perfect.
So, but I really appreciate you both having me here.
I appreciate you being on.
We
I appreciate
both
you taking some hard questions that I think a lot of people were interested in hearing the answer
Absolutely.
to. So,
Yeah.
yeah, again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And November 7th is really important.
We're right around the corner.
Yeah, so it's right around the corner. So,
4 days away.
I will say this too. I have nothing but admiration for people who put themselves out there and say, hey, I want to try this. I want to do this. And, there's nothing better than getting involved in your community. I'm not a politician of any sort. I'm a mom. And, I worked in community service, and that's what I'll continue to do. But I just feel really strongly about our students and making sure that they have the opportunities to, thrive, grow, and that as a board, we're doing our job and what our role is in getting them there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Laura. Tom, you got anything before you head out?
No, it was just want to say it's a pleasure meeting you. Pleasure learning a little bit more about you, your background, and it was awesome that you came on here, took these tough questions, as Anthony said, and you were able to come out here to speak to them. And, maybe someone who's out there and, they just weren't sure about who you are. Now, I think we get a better picture of who Laura Jones is and her future involvement with our school board. And, hey, you got two friends here now. Anytime you want to come on, talk about something, I'm sure Anthony wouldn't mind scheduling us in again to chat,
Thanks.
So,
I like to talk about a lot of things. And I also do want to give you both a shout out because I listen to a lot of podcasts. So you pay attention to those, production things and how that discourse goes. And I think, what I've watched and even experienced tonight, I think you've done a great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Best of luck on your candidacy and
Thank
your
you.
running. And we'll see you guys on the next